Hello friends, in today's video we'll discuss analysis and design of the Days Between Dates mobile app. So first we'll see what are the steps in designing the app. The very first step is problem statement. So when we get a problem statement, what we have to do with it next? Very first thing we have to do is understand the problem statement and then break it down into input, processing, and output. And based on these input, processing, and output, we will decide the design which we have to implement for the app. And then we have to list the features which we would like to have in the app. And to achieve this design and the code features, what are the softwares and libraries required? This is the first step. The next step is app design. So app design, we have to see what are the elements we would require, what are the widgets we would require to achieve the requirements which we have decided in the design requirements. And then we follow the best practices for designing. So while we are designing, we should make sure that we utilize every part of the screen and it is readable also. Next step is app features. So what are the coding features we require? And then we have to incorporate these coding features with best practices. What is the best way of doing it? Because if you want to add a feature, there are 10 different ways in which you can have that feature in your app. But what is the best way which would consume less of time, less of data, and less of memory? And then we have to decide which API level we are going to serve for and what are the devices which we are going to support. Because if you want your app to be compatible, some of the features will not be available for the users who are working on old API levels. And also, so you can create a app for a mobile, or you can also create it for a tab. So these are the steps which we are going to discuss with respect to our problem statement, which is calculating days between dates. So next we'll see the problem statement, which is create a mobile app to calculate days between dates. So this is our problem statement. So what we gather with this: number one, input, we need start date and end dates. So this is the input we get from the user. Processing. So we calculate days between these two dates which we have received from the user. Output. There are many ways of giving this output. So we can give in year, months and days, weeks and days. We can just give in days. So either we give the output in all these forms, or we can give it in any of one of these forms. So it depends how you want to design it. So these are many options, and it is very important that we clarify these things at initial stage itself, so that we don't have to redo the design, we don't have to redo the coding. These small details, if we are clear at the very first stage, it would be very quick development and designing job for us. So next, so design requirement. So what kind of color palette are we going to use? And what would be the night one, what would be the day one? Because you can have two themes, so that the app is properly visible at night time also. So you have to decide on the color palette and the different design elements which you would like to add on the mobile app screen. So first is a date picker for picking up the start date and end date, number drop down. So there are different ways of getting the input, you can have a date picker or you can have a number drop down, one for month, date and year, or you can display a whole calendar. So it depends on what you would like to do and how you would like to use the mobile screen space. So you decide how the input would be taken from the user. Next is coding feature. So the most important thing which we have to keep in mind is the two date picker dialogues. If we are using date picker dialog, then they have to be dependent on each other. So you cannot have a start date which is after the end date. So these thing is very important in this app. Next is you would like to give the user option of selecting if they want the end date to be included in number of days or not, or you want to exclude it. If you want to give that option, then again in the design you have to keep in mind that you have to add a checkbox for the same. Next, the different softwares which is required. Obviously we need Android Studio. So date manipulation, so the library which is there already in Android Studio, we have better options than that. So we would have to import few libraries for that date manipulation, and we would also require to import a library for validation. So whenever you take input from the user, you have to make sure that it is in the right format. So validation is very important. It is very important in mobile app designing that entering the input should be easier for the users. Plus, uh, if we use a date picker, a drop down instead of a text box, then the validation of the data would be much easier and we can restrict what we are getting and it will be a quick input. It would be easy for the user to select the input and the chances of error would be minimized. So validation is very important, and also the design element which we uh, decide to have on the app screen should always be validated. If the user is typing in the input, then it has to be validated. It is very important. So we would need to import a library for validation also. Next, we'll see the app design. So design elements and widgets which we would require, we need date picker, checkbox, button and text view. So there is no tool or widget as date picker, because if you select calendar, the whole calendar would be displayed on the screen. So we have to find a way to have a pop-up date picker. So we will do some tweak in the design time to achieve this. Then we need a checkbox. So the user can select if they want the last date to be included in number of days or not. Then we would have button to calculate and a text view to display the output. Next, we have to keep in mind when we design, first and foremost is validation, and we have to use the screen space very smartly because we cannot waste even single pixels. Mobile screen is small, and the text should be readable, and the color scheme should be soft on the eye. Next is app features which we would like to have. So first is dependent date picker. Yes, so as we discussed previously, the start date and end date should be interdependent. By dependent date picker, what we mean here is, say if the user has selected 1st of December 2020 as the start date, then when we display the end date picker, the user should be able to select dates after 1st of December, because you cannot have start and end date on the same day, right? So the user should be able to select the end date after 1st of December. So later on, if the user changes the start date to say 1st of November, then again the end date picker dialog box should allow the user to select any dates starting from 2nd of November, right? So that's the concept. So this we have to do using coding. Next is we have to follow the best practices for coding, like efficient use of memory, effective use of memory, and quick processing. What is the best way of doing? What is the quickest way of doing? We have to keep this in mind while we are coding. Next, as we discussed previously, what is the minimum API level which we are going to support in this app, and also the device support which we are going to support. So in our case, we'll be supporting only mobile app. So thank you for seeing this video. So in the next video, we'll do the designing of the app using Android Studio. Thank you for watching. Hope it was useful.